Michelle Carter arrived at 6:47 a.m., 13 minutes before her shift began, as she always did. She paused at the entrance of the marina's main office, a sleek building of floor-to-ceiling windows and polished white stone that overlooked 300 private yacht slips. The morning air carried the familiar perfume of salt, diesel, and possibility. Somewhere beyond the breakwater, a pelican dove for breakfast. The gentle percussion of halyards tapping against aluminum masts created a rhythm that had become the soundtrack of her life. 23 years old, and Michelle had spent the last 2 of them learning every corner of this place, every dock, every slip number, every regular customer's preferred greeting. Her micro-braids were pulled back into her signature low ponytail, neat and professional. Her marina uniform, white polo shirt embroidered with the Bayshore crest, navy slacks, sensible flats, was pressed to perfection. She unlocked the main doors and began her opening routine, switching on the lights, booting up the registration systems, checking the overnight weather reports, reviewing the day's scheduled arrivals and departures. Slip 47, the Wanderer, a 42-foot sailing yacht. Departing 9 a.m. Slip 12, Lucky Strike, a modest fishing boat. Fuel request. Slip 89, Sovereign Dreams, a 120-foot superyacht owned by a Miami real estate developer. Full detailing service scheduled. And then, at the bottom of the list, Slip 7, Horizon, a 70-foot yacht. Extended stay. Owner, D. Kong. Michelle smiled slightly. Mr. Kang had been docking at Bayshore for 3 months now, appearing every few weeks for stays that lasted anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks. He was quiet, polite, and entirely unremarkable in appearance. Polo shirts in muted colors, simple canvas sneakers, no jewelry except for a modest watch that looked like it might have come from a department store. She liked him. Not in any romantic way, Michelle didn't have time for such distractions, but in the way she appreciated anyone who moved through the world with genuine humility. Mr. Kang never demanded special treatment. He never complained. He thanked the maintenance staff by name. He remembered birthdays. The man owned a yacht worth several $1,000,000, yet he carried himself like someone who had wandered into wealth by accident and still couldn't quite believe his luck. The front door chimed, and Michelle looked up to see Ji-eun Park gliding in with the elegant precision of a woman who had rehearsed her entrance in a mirror. "Good morning," Ji-eun sang, her accent a melodic blend of Seoul and Los Angeles. At 22, she possessed the kind of beauty that made people pause mid-sentence. High cheekbones, flawless skin, dark hair that fell in perfectly styled waves. Her uniform somehow looked like it had been tailored by a designer. "You're early," Michelle observed. "Couldn't sleep." Ji-eun set her designer handbag, a birthday gift from her parents, she'd explained, beneath the reception desk. "I had the strangest dream about that cryptocurrency guy from Slip 23. He proposed to me on a helicopter." Michelle laughed. "Was it at least a nice helicopter? Gold-plated. Very tacky." "I said no." Ji-eun began arranging her workspace with the meticulous attention she gave to everything. "Where's May?" "Running late, probably. Probably taking 15 selfies with her morning coffee." As if summoned by the mention of her name, Mei Lin burst through the door at exactly 6:59 a.m., breathless and triumphant. "I made it," she announced, her Chinese-American accent carrying notes of both Mandarin and San Francisco. At 24, Mei was the oldest of the 3, though her energy suggested someone much younger. Her uniform was slightly wrinkled, her hair pulled into a hasty bun, and her phone was already in her hand. "Did you see who just posted about their yacht trip to the Bahamas? That influencer, the one with the problematic spray tan, she's dating a tech billionaire now." "Good morning to you too," Michelle said dryly. Mei grinned, unrepentant. "I'm just saying. Some of us are out here working 8-hour shifts while other people are literally sailing into sunsets with men who own islands. You could always quit and become an influencer," Ji-eun suggested. "I tried." "Do you know how hard it is to get good lighting on a marina?" "The glare alone," Mei shook her head. "Anyway, what's on the schedule?" Michelle handed her a tablet. "Busy day. 3 new arrivals, 2 departures, a whole inspection at noon, and Mr. Harrison from Slip 89 wants to discuss his anniversary party." Oh, that's the one with the wife who wears real diamonds to the marina, May said. She's literally dripping money. She's very kind, Michelle corrected gently. She always asks about my grandmother. Sure, but she also has a Hermes Birkin in every color. I've counted. The morning rush began shortly after 7, and the three women fell into their natural rhythm. Jiyun handled the check-ins with practiced grace, her smile calibrated differently depending on the apparent wealth of the customer. May managed the phone lines, her conversations peppered with just enough charm to keep even the most demanding clients satisfied. And Michelle moved between tasks like water, answering questions, solving problems, ensuring that every single person who walked through those doors felt genuinely welcomed. It was, she knew, an unusual philosophy in a place like this. Bayshore Luxury Marina catered to the wealthy. The parking lot was filled with Bentleys and Ferraris. The customers wore costly watches. The yachts ranged from the merely expensive to the genuinely obscene, floating palaces with helicopter pads, swimming pools, and full-time crews. Most of her coworkers, including Jiyun and May, understood the unspoken hierarchy. Important clients received important treatment. Bigger yachts meant bigger smiles. Status determined service. Michelle rejected this entirely. Her grandmother, who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 7, had instilled in her a simple belief: every human being deserved dignity. It didn't matter if you arrived at the marina in a fishing boat or a superyacht. It didn't matter if you wore designer clothes or hand-me-downs. Respect wasn't something people earned with money. Everyone deserved it. So Michelle smiled the same smile at everyone. She offered the same help. She remembered names across the entire spectrum of wealth, from the retired couple who docked their modest 30-foot sailboat twice a year to the tech moguls who flew in on private jets. It was, some people said, her best quality. It was also, Michelle suspected, the reason she'd never be promoted. The morning sun had climbed high enough to transform the marina into a dazzling display of light and water when Michelle noticed the familiar figure walking along Dock C. Dae-hoon Kong moved with the unhurried grace of someone who had nowhere particular to be. His navy polo shirt was slightly faded, his khaki shorts unremarkable, his sneakers the kind you might find in any department store. He carried a small paper bag in one hand and a book in the other. Michelle watched him for a moment through the office windows, struck, as she often was, by the quiet contradiction of him. His yacht, Horizon, was worth at least $8 million. She'd looked up the manufacturer once, curious. Kang Maritime, one of South Korea's most prestigious yacht builders. Yet nothing about the man suggested that kind of wealth. He stopped at the edge of the dock, sat down on a wooden bench, and opened his book. "Who's that?" May appeared at Michelle's shoulder, squinting through the glass. "Mr. Kong. Slip 7. "Oh, him." May's interest faded immediately. "The quiet one. What's his deal?" "He likes to read." "No, I mean, what's his deal? Where'd he get the money for that yacht? Is he tech? Real estate? Crypto?" "I don't know," Michelle said honestly. "I've never asked." May stared at her. "You've never, Michelle. He's been coming here for months. You've never once tried to find out what he does." "It's not relevant to my job." "But aren't you curious?" Michelle considered this. Was she curious? Perhaps a little. Dae-hoon Kong was something of an anomaly, wealthy enough to own a yacht, humble enough to carry his own groceries. Most of Bayshore's clients arrived with entourages, personal assistants, private chefs. Mr. Kong arrived alone and seemed to prefer it that way. "I'm curious about a lot of things," Michelle finally said. "That doesn't mean I need answers." May shook her head, clearly baffled by this approach to life, and returned to her phone. An hour later, Michelle was restocking the complimentary coffee station when a shadow fell across the counter. "Good morning." His voice was soft, accented with something she couldn't quite place, Korean, certainly, but with traces of other influences. British education, perhaps, or time spent in Singapore. It was the voice of someone who had lived in many places. Michelle looked up and found Dae-hoon Kang standing before her, the paper bag tucked under his arm, his expression carefully neutral. "Good morning, Mr. Kong. How can I help you today? I was wondering if you might have a recommendation." "Of course." "For what?" "Breakfast." He seemed almost embarrassed by the question. I've been eating at the same cafe every morning, but they're closed for renovations. I thought, since you seem to know this area well, you might suggest an alternative. Michelle smiled. She'd worked at this marina for 2 years, and this was the first time Dae-hoon Kang had asked her for anything beyond basic services. Do you want something quick and casual, or somewhere you can sit and enjoy the view? He considered this with the seriousness of a man weighing a significant decision. Sit and enjoy the view. I have time. Then I'd recommend Saltwater Kitchen. It's about a 10-minute walk down the boardwalk on the left side. They have excellent pancakes, and the patio overlooks the water. Saltwater Kitchen, he repeated, as if memorizing the name. Thank you. I appreciate the recommendation. He turned to leave, then paused. Miss Carter. Michelle blinked. She hadn't realized he knew her name. Her name tag was small, easy to overlook. Most customers never bothered to read it. Yes, I've noticed he seemed to struggle with the words. You treat everyone the same here, whether they own the largest yacht or the smallest boat. I wanted you to know it's noticed and appreciated. Before Michelle could respond, he was gone, walking toward the marina exit with his unhurried stride. Ji-yoon appeared at her elbow. What did he want? Breakfast recommendation. That's all? He didn't mention his yacht? His plans? Nothing about business. No. Michelle returned to restocking the coffee station. Why would he? Ji-yoon made a dismissive sound. He's so boring. Every time I try to have a conversation with him, he gives me one-word answers. I don't understand how someone with a yacht like that can be so plain. Maybe he just values his privacy. Or maybe he's secretly married with 5 kids in Korea and he's using the yacht to hide from his responsibilities. Michelle laughed despite herself. That's quite a theory. I'm just saying. Ji-yoon examined her nails, which were painted a perfect shell pink. The interesting ones are always hiding something. 2 weeks passed. Miami's October heat gave way to something slightly more bearable as November approached. The marina's fall festival was scheduled for the end of the month, and preparations consumed much of Michelle's attention. There were vendor contracts to finalize, entertainment to book, and approximately 100 small details that threatened to slip through the cracks if she wasn't vigilant. Dae-hoon Kang had departed after his last stay, but Michelle found herself thinking about their brief interaction more than she'd expected. Not in any romantic sense, she was far too practical for such fantasies, but with a kind of professional curiosity. He was a puzzle, and Michelle had always liked puzzles. Meanwhile, normal life at the marina continued. Have you seen this? May thrust her phone toward Michelle during their lunch break. On the screen was a social media post, a photo of an enormous yacht, gleaming white against a Caribbean blue sky. Marcus Thompson, the basketball player, just bought a new yacht. 150 feet. Has its own movie theater. Good for him, Michelle said mildly, unwrapping her sandwich. Good for him. May clutched her phone to her chest. Michelle, if I married someone like that, I would never work another day in my life. Would that make you happy? Would unlimited money make me happy? May stared at her as if she'd grown a second head. Yes, obviously. Are you serious? Ji-yoon joined them at their usual table on the waterfront patio, her salad arranged with architectural precision. What are we discussing? Michelle's alarming lack of interest in wealthy men, May reported. Ji-yoon nodded sagely. I've given up trying to understand it. Michelle, I say this with love, but you need better dreams. My dreams are fine. Your dreams are boring. You want to, become marina manager someday? Stay here forever, doing the same job, helping the same people. I want to be good at what I do, Michelle said simply. I want to treat people with respect. I want to make enough money to take care of my grandmother and build a life that feels meaningful. I don't need a wealthy husband for any of that. Ji-yoon and May exchanged glances, the kind of glance that suggested they found Michelle's perspective charming, but ultimately naive. You're 23, Ji-yoon said gently. You're allowed to want more. I do want more. I just want more of the things I actually control. Before the conversation could continue, Michelle's radio crackled. Michelle, we have a situation at Slip 22. Can you head over? She was already standing. On my way. The situation at Slip 22 turned out to be a minor fuel dispute, easily resolved with patience and clear communication. By the time Michelle returned to the main office, the lunch break was over and her friends had returned to their stations. The afternoon brought a parade of familiar faces. Mr. Rodriguez from Slip 15, with his sunburned nose and infectious laugh. The Wellington family from Slip 31, preparing for their annual trip to the Keys. Dr. Okonkwo from Slip 44, who always brought Michelle questions about marine biology that she had no business being able to answer. And then, just as the sun began its descent toward the water, a familiar yacht appeared at the marina entrance. Horizon. Michelle watched from the office windows as the 70-foot vessel glided into its assigned slip with expert precision. A single figure stood at the helm, Dae-hoon Kang, his face unreadable beneath the golden light of dusk. "He's back," May observed, glancing up from her phone. "What's that, his fourth visit this month?" "Third," Ji-yoon corrected. She was already checking her reflection in her compact mirror, smoothing an invisible strand of hair. "And each time he stays longer. I wonder why." "Business, probably," Michelle said. "Or a woman. Or business." Ji-yoon snapped her compact shut. "I'm going to go welcome him. Properly this time. He's obviously wealthy, you don't own a yacht like that without money, and he's clearly successful. Maybe if I actually took the time to talk to him." "You've tried talking to him," Michelle pointed out. "Multiple times. Those were casual conversations. This will be strategic." Ji-yoon gathered her tablet and strode toward the door with purpose. "Watch and learn, ladies." Michelle watched through the windows as Ji-yoon made her way down the dock, her stride confident, her smile brilliant. She approached Horizon just as Dae-hoon finished securing the vessel, and Michelle could see her launching into what was clearly a rehearsed conversation. From this distance, she couldn't hear the words, but she could read the body language. Ji-yoon, animated, charming, leaning slightly forward. Dae-hoon, polite, reserved, leaning slightly back. After perhaps 3 minutes, Ji-yoon nodded, smiled, and retreated. She returned to the office, looking frustrated. "Well?" May asked. "Nothing. He thanked me for the welcome and said he was tired from the trip. Wouldn't tell me anything about himself. Wouldn't let me schedule a dinner reservation. Nothing. Did you ask what he does for a living?" I tried to ask subtly. "He just said he works in manufacturing." "How vague is that?" "Manufacturing could mean anything." Michelle said nothing, but she was secretly pleased. There was something refreshing about a wealthy man who refused to perform wealth. The next morning, Michelle arrived early to find that Dae-hoon Kang had beaten her. He was sitting on the same bench at the edge of Dock C, watching the sunrise with his ever-present book open on his lap. The light caught the sharp angles of his face, casting him in shades of gold and amber. In that moment, silhouetted against the awakening sky, he looked almost otherworldly. Michelle shook off the thought and headed inside. The morning passed quickly. By mid-afternoon, she was helping Mr. Chin from Slip 8 arrange a charter service when she noticed something unusual, a cluster of men in expensive suits standing near the main entrance, their attention fixed on something outside. One of them, clearly the leader, based on his posture and the deference of the others, was speaking rapidly into a phone. "Yes, Mr. Chairman is here. We've confirmed it. No, he doesn't want the security detail visible. You know how he is." Michelle froze. "Mr. Chairman?" She followed their gaze and saw Dae-hoon Kang walking along the dock, completely oblivious to the attention, his nose buried in a different book than yesterday. The man on the phone continued, "Of course, we're being discreet. The last thing he wants is a scene. You know how private he is about these visits. No one here even knows who he is." Michelle's mind raced. Chairman. The word hung in the air, impossible to ignore. She thought about everything she knew, the expensive yacht, the simple clothes, the refusal to discuss his work. Manufacturing. He'd said he worked in manufacturing. Her eyes drifted to the horizon, taking in its sleek lines, its elegant design. Kang Maritime, she remembered. One of South Korea's most prestigious yacht builders. Kang. His name was Kang. The realization hit her like a wave. Dae-hoon Kang wasn't just some wealthy businessman who happened to own a yacht. He was the chairman of Kong Maritime, one of the fastest-growing luxury yacht manufacturers in the world. His company had been in the news recently. She remembered reading something about a major expansion into the American market. He wasn't just rich. He was the kind of wealthy that most people couldn't even comprehend. And he had been visiting this marina for months, dressing in polo shirts and sneakers, letting everyone assume he was merely well off rather than genuinely powerful. Michelle felt something shift in her chest, not excitement, not ambition, but something closer to respect. He could have arrived with bodyguards and assistants. He could have demanded VIP treatment. Instead, he had chosen anonymity. She respected that more than she could express. But now, watching the suited men attempt to be discreet, she realized that his secret was about to become public knowledge. If they were here, others would notice. Word would spread. By this time tomorrow, everyone at Bayshore would know exactly who had been docking at Slip 7. Including Jiun and May. Michelle made a decision. She walked toward the suited men with her most professional expression. "Excuse me. May I help you, gentlemen?" The leader lowered his phone slightly. "We're just here to observe." "I understand. But if you're planning to stay on marina property, I'll need to see some identification and register your visit." Standard security protocol. He looked annoyed, but complied, producing a business card that confirmed Michelle's suspicions. Kang Maritime International, Executive Security Division. "We're trying to be inconspicuous," he said, as if this explained everything. "I appreciate that." However, a group of men in suits standing near the entrance is the opposite of inconspicuous. If you'd like to maintain discretion, I'd suggest waiting in the private lounge. I can arrange for refreshments, and you'll have a clear view of Dock C without attracting attention. He considered this, then nodded. That would be acceptable. Michelle led them to the private lounge, ensured they had everything they needed, and returned to the main office. May was waiting with wide eyes. "Who were those guys?" "Security," Michelle said simply. "For one of our high-profile clients." "Which one?" "That's confidential." May groaned. "You're no fun." Michelle smiled and said nothing more. By the following week, the secret was out. Michelle wasn't sure who had discovered it. Perhaps one of the security men had been less discreet than promised, or perhaps someone had simply searched Dae-hoon Kang's name and made the connection. But by Monday morning, the entire marina staff knew the truth. The chairman of Kong Maritime had been visiting Bayshore for months. One of the wealthiest young businessmen in South Korea, heir to a yacht empire, recently profiled in business magazines, routinely included on 30 under 30 lists, had been wandering their docks in faded polo shirts, entirely unrecognized. The reaction was predictable. Jiun arrived that morning looking like she'd spent 3 hours on her appearance, which, Michelle suspected, she had. Her makeup was flawless. Her hair fell in perfect waves. She had somehow acquired a new uniform that fit better than her old one. "I can't believe I didn't see it," she kept saying. A yacht named Horizon, manufactured by Kang Maritime, owned by someone named Kong? The signs were right there. May was equally energized, though her focus was slightly different. "Do you know how many followers I could gain if I got a photo with him? Not like a creepy photo, a professional one. If he mentioned the marina on his social media, we'd go viral." Michelle listened to their chatter with growing unease. She watched throughout the morning as both women found excuses to visit Dock C. Jiun brought complimentary welcome materials that she'd never brought before. May offered to personally check on the yacht's fuel levels. Their behavior had shifted overnight from casual professionalism to something more obvious. It made Michelle uncomfortable. Not because she judged them, she understood the allure of wealth, even if she didn't share it, but because she remembered who Dae-hoon Kang had been before the discovery. A quiet man who valued privacy. A customer who appreciated being treated normally. That man deserved better than this. When Dae-hoon finally emerged from his yacht around noon, Michelle observed from the office windows as Jiun intercepted him near the coffee station. "Mr. Kong." Jiun's voice carried across the marina. "I was hoping I might have a moment of your time. I've been doing some research on Kang Maritime, absolutely fascinating company, and I'd love to hear more about your expansion plans." Daehoon's expression was unreadable. Thank you for your interest. But I'm here for personal time, not business. Of course, of course. I completely understand. But if you ever need anything at all, I'm always available. My number is on the back of my card. She pressed a business card into his hand. Day or night? Michelle winced internally. Daehoon accepted the card, nodded politely, and continued toward the main office. Jiyoon watched him go with a satisfied expression, clearly convinced she'd made an impression. He entered the office, and Michelle looked up from her work with her usual professional smile. Good afternoon, Mr. Kang. How can I help you? Something flickered in his eyes, relief, perhaps, or gratitude. It was there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. Good afternoon, Miss Carter. I was hoping to extend my stay by another week. Is slip 7 available? Let me check. She consulted her computer. Yes, it's available. I can process the extension right now if you'd like. Please. She completed the paperwork efficiently, as she always did. No fanfare, no excessive attention, no sudden shift in behavior. When she handed him the receipt, he didn't leave immediately. Instead, he stood there for a moment, as if gathering words. I should apologize, he finally said. Michelle tilted her head. For what? For not being honest about who I am. I understand it may seem deceptive. Mr. Kong, you're a customer. What you choose to share about yourself is your business. You don't owe me or anyone else an explanation. He studied her face with an intensity that might have been uncomfortable if it hadn't seemed so genuine. You mean that? I do. And you're not, he hesitated. You're not going to treat me differently now? Michelle smiled, her real smile, not the professional version. I've been treating you exactly the same way I treat everyone else, Mr. Kong. I see no reason to change that now. For the first time since she'd met him, Daehoon Kang smiled back. It transformed his face, softening his serious features into something almost boyish. Thank you, he said quietly. You have no idea how much that means. He left the office, and Michelle returned to her work. But she carried the warmth of that exchange with her for the rest of the day. The weeks that followed brought a shift in the marina's atmosphere. News of Daehoon Kang's identity had spread beyond the staff to some of the more well-connected customers. Suddenly, Horizon attracted more attention than any yacht at Bayshore, not because it was the largest or most expensive, but because of who owned it. Other yacht owners found excuses to walk past slip 7. Business-minded customers tried to engineer casual encounters. The marina's social dynamics rearranged themselves around the quiet man who wanted nothing more than to be left alone. Jiyoon had intensified her campaign. Every interaction with Daehoon was now an opportunity to demonstrate her knowledge of the yacht industry, to showcase her elegance, to plant seeds for a relationship that might blossom into something more. It's strategic, she explained to Michelle and May during their lunch break. He's not married. He's clearly successful. And he's obviously intelligent. A man like that needs someone sophisticated by his side. And you think that someone is you? May asked, not unkindly. I think I have as good a chance as anyone. Maybe better. He comes to this marina for a reason. If I position myself correctly. Jiyoon. Michelle set down her fork. Have you considered that he might not be interested in being positioned? What do you mean? I mean, he's been coming here for months. He dressed simply, kept to himself, never drew attention. Those were choices. Maybe he just wants to enjoy his time here without anyone treating him like a target. Jiyoon's expression cooled. That's easy for you to say. You've never cared about this kind of opportunity. It's not that I don't care. It's that I don't think of people as opportunities. The words hung between them, and for a moment, Michelle worried she'd been too harsh. But then Jiyoon looked away, something unreadable crossing her face. Well, she said finally, we can't all be as noble as you, Michelle. The rest of the lunch passed in awkward silence. That afternoon, Michelle was organizing the marina's upcoming charity event, a yacht showcase to raise money for ocean conservation, when she received an unexpected visitor. Daehoon Kang appeared at her desk, looking slightly out of place without his usual book. Miss Carter. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all. What can I do for you? He glanced around, confirming they were relatively alone. I wanted to ask about the charity event. The yacht showcase next week. Yes, it's for the Marine Conservation Alliance. We partner with them every year. Some of our yacht owners donate tours and experiences, and all proceeds go to ocean cleanup initiatives. I see. He paused. I'd like to contribute. Of course. What type of contribution were you thinking? We accept monetary donations, or you could donate an experience, a yacht tour, perhaps. Actually, I was thinking of something larger. He pulled an envelope from his pocket and placed it on her desk. My company has been looking for charitable partnerships in the region. I believe the Marine Conservation Alliance aligns well with our values. Michelle opened the envelope and felt her breath catch. Inside was a check for $500,000. Mr. Kong, please don't make a scene, he said quickly. I don't want recognition or publicity. The donation should be anonymous. I simply want to help. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't noticed before. Beneath the quiet exterior, beneath the careful neutrality, there was genuine passion. He cared about the ocean. He cared enough to donate an enormous sum without expecting anything in return. You love the sea, she said softly. That's why you keep coming here. His expression shifted, surprise flickering through his features. Most people assume I come for business reasons. The American expansion. Networking opportunities. But that's not it. No. My grandmother taught me to sail. When I was young, before the company grew, before everything became complicated, she would take me out on the water. We had a small boat, nothing like what I own now. We would sail for hours, and she would tell me stories about the ocean. How it connects everything. How it carries memories. Michelle felt something stir in her chest. She sounds wonderful. She was. He paused. She passed away 3 years ago. Sometimes, when I'm out there, I feel like I can still hear her voice. The vulnerability in his words caught Michelle off guard. This was not the composed businessman who deflected Ji-yoon's advances with polite distance. This was someone real, someone grieving, someone seeking peace in the same waters that had once brought him joy. I understand, Michelle said quietly. My grandmother raised me too. She's the reason I treat everyone the way I do. She always said that kindness costs nothing, but it's worth everything. Daehoon turned back to her, and for a moment, something passed between them, not romance, not yet, but recognition. The sense of two people who understood something fundamental about each other. I should go, he said, breaking the silence. But thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. He nodded and walked away. Michelle watched him go, the $500,000 check still in her hands, and felt for the first time that this man, this quiet, complicated man, might be someone worth knowing. The charity yacht showcase arrived on a Saturday evening painted in shades of violet and gold. The marina had been transformed. White tents lined the waterfront, strings of lights glittered above the docks, and soft jazz floated through the salt-tinged air. Dozens of the marina's most prestigious yachts were on display, their owners offering tours and experiences for charity auction. Michelle had been working since dawn, coordinating logistics, managing volunteers, and ensuring every detail was perfect. She was exhausted, exhilarated, and quietly proud. This is incredible, May said, appearing at her side with a glass of champagne she definitely wasn't supposed to have. Michelle, seriously, you planned all this? I had help. You had an assistant who mostly complained about the weather. This was you. Michelle smiled, accepting the compliment. Have you seen Mr. Kong? I wanted to thank him again for the donation. I saw him near the East Pavilion earlier. Ji-yoon was talking to him. May's expression suggested this conversation was going as well as usual. Michelle found them a few minutes later. Ji-yoon was in full performance mode, gesturing expansively, her laughter slightly too bright. Daehoon stood beside her with the patient expression of someone waiting for a polite excuse to leave. Miss Carter. His relief was visible. I was just looking for you. I wanted to congratulate you on the event. Thank you, Mr. Kong. We're grateful for your support. Ji-yoon's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. I was just telling Mr. Kong about my experience at last year's event. I thought he might be interested in hearing about the marina's history. I'm sure he would be. Michelle turned to Daehoon. Actually, Mr. Kong, the director of the Marine Conservation Alliance, is here tonight. She was hoping to thank you personally, anonymously, of course. Would you have a few minutes? Of course. She led him away, leaving Jiun standing alone with an expression that wavered between frustration and hurt. As they walked toward the main pavilion, Daehoon spoke quietly. Thank you for the rescue. I wasn't rescuing you. You were. And I'm grateful. Michelle glanced at him sideways. She means well, you know. Jiun. She's ambitious, but she's not cruel. I know. But ambition directed at me rather than toward her own goals makes me uncomfortable. He paused. I've spent my entire life being wanted for what I represent. My money, my position, my company. It becomes difficult to trust that anyone might want me. Michelle considered this. That sounds lonely. It can be. They walked in silence for a moment, surrounded by laughter and music and the gentle lapping of water against hulls. Can I ask you something? Daehoon said. Of course. You knew who I was, or at least you suspected, before everyone else found out. You saw my security team that day. Michelle nodded slowly. I did. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you change? She thought about the question carefully. Because it didn't matter. You were the same person before and after I knew. A customer who treated staff with respect, who tipped the maintenance crew, who remembered birthdays. Knowing your title didn't change any of that. He stopped walking and turned to face her. The lights from the pavilion cast soft shadows across his face, and his eyes were searching, intent. You're remarkable, he said quietly. Has anyone ever told you that? Michelle felt warmth creep into her cheeks. I think my grandmother might have mentioned it once. He laughed, a genuine laugh, surprised and delighted, and Michelle realized she had never heard him laugh before. It was a beautiful sound. In the weeks following the charity event, something shifted between Michelle and Daehoon. It wasn't dramatic, no grand declarations, no obvious changes in behavior. But there were small moments that accumulated like shells collected on a beach. He began visiting the main office more frequently, always with legitimate reasons, extending his stay, asking about weather reports, inquiring about local restaurants, but his visits lasted longer than necessary. They talked about books and travel and the peculiar satisfaction of perfectly organized paperwork. She discovered that he had studied philosophy in university before joining the family business. He learned that she had dreams of opening her own marina management consultancy someday. She told him about her grandmother's famous sweet potato pie. He told her about the small fishing village where his grandmother had taught him to sail. The conversations were never romantic. There was no flirtation, no charged silences, no meaningful glances held a moment too long. And yet, something was building, an understanding, a comfort, a sense of being genuinely seen. Jiun noticed. You spend a lot of time talking to him, she observed one afternoon, her tone carefully neutral. Michelle looked up from her paperwork. He's a customer. I talk to all our customers. Not like that. Jiun sat down heavily in the chair across from Michelle's desk. I've been trying to get his attention for weeks. I've read about his company. I've studied the yacht industry. I've practiced my Korean. Did you know I've been taking language lessons? I didn't. And none of it matters. Because every time I talk to him, he's polite but distant. And every time you talk to him, he actually engages. Michelle set down her pen. Jiun. I'm not angry. I'm just. She trailed off, struggling to find the word. Confused. What are you doing differently? Michelle thought about this seriously. I'm not doing anything. That's the point. I'm just being myself. Treating him like a person, not an opportunity. But that's what I'm doing. Is it? Jiun opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. Something flickered in her expression, the beginning of self-awareness, perhaps. Maybe, she said slowly, I've been trying too hard. Maybe you've been trying for the wrong reasons. Jiun was silent for a long moment. Then she stood, smoothed her skirt, and walked toward the door. I need to think about some things, she said quietly. It was, Michelle thought, the first step toward something important. The November Marina Festival arrived with perfect weather and enormous crowds. Michelle had been looking forward to it for weeks, not because of the event itself, but because it marked the first time she would have an entire afternoon off since she'd started planning the charity showcase. She wandered through the festival alone, enjoying the freedom of being a guest rather than staff. She bought fried plantains from a vendor she'd helped arrange permits for. She watched children race remote control boats in the temporary pools. She sat on a bench overlooking the water and simply breathed. "You look different without your uniform." She turned to find Daehoon standing nearby, holding what appeared to be a snow cone. He was dressed casually, though his casual still managed to look expensive and seemed more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "I feel different," she admitted. "Lighter. No radio, no clipboard, no problems to solve. May I join you?" She gestured to the empty space beside her, and he sat down. They watched the festival together in comfortable silence. Boats glided across the marina, their sails catching the afternoon light. Seagulls argued over discarded popcorn. A live band played something tropical and upbeat. "I'm leaving tomorrow," Daehoon said eventually. Michelle felt a surprising pang of disappointment. "Oh, I have business in New York. Then back to Seoul for the holidays." He paused. "I'll be gone for about 6 weeks." 6 weeks. It shouldn't have mattered. He was a customer, and customers came and went, but somehow the news settled heavily in her chest. "I hope your business goes well," she said, meaning it. "Thank you." He turned to face her, and she was struck by the intensity of his gaze. "I wanted to thank you. For everything. For the way you've treated me since I arrived. For the charity event. For making this place feel like somewhere I belong. You do belong here, Mr. Kang." "Daehoon." She blinked. "What?" "Please. Call me Daehoon." At least, he hesitated. "At least when we're not in official capacity." Michelle felt warmth spread through her. "Then you should call me Michelle." "Michelle. When I come back, if you're willing, I'd like to spend more time with you. Not as a customer. Just as someone who enjoys your company." Her heart beat faster, though her voice remained calm. "I'd like that too." He smiled, that rare, transformative smile, and for a moment, the noise of the festival faded away. "Then I'll have something to look forward to," he said. The band launched into a new song, and somewhere nearby, a child laughed with pure joy. Michelle smiled back at him and felt, for the first time in a long time, that the future held more possibility than she'd imagined. The 6 weeks of Daehoon's absence stretched longer than Michelle had anticipated. She hadn't realized how accustomed she'd become to seeing him around the marina until he was gone. The bench at Dock C sat empty. The horizon had been moved to a protected storage slip for the winter months. The quiet exchanges, the shared observations, the gentle humor, all of it had vanished like morning mist. Michelle threw herself into work. The holiday season was always busy at Bayshore. Yacht owners arrived from colder climates to spend winter in Miami's warmth. Corporate groups booked the marina for lavish end-of-year celebrations. The staff worked overtime to accommodate the surge. Jiyoon had changed subtly but noticeably. She still dressed beautifully and maintained her elegant presence, but something had softened in her approach. She no longer pursued customers with obvious ambition. She treated everyone with consistent professionalism, regardless of the size of their yacht. "I've been thinking about what you said," she told Michelle one evening as they closed up the office. "About trying for the wrong reasons. And I realized that I was so focused on what people could give me that I never considered what I could give them. It's not a good feeling." Michelle nodded slowly. "Growth rarely feels comfortable." "No." Jiyoon managed a small laugh. "It doesn't. But I think I'm better for it." She paused. "Have you heard from him? Mr. Kang?" "No. I wouldn't expect to. But you miss him." It wasn't a question. Michelle considered denying it, but Jiyoon's gaze was knowing. "I enjoy his company," Michelle admitted carefully. "That's all." "Michelle." Jiyoon's smile was almost gentle. "You're allowed to want things for yourself. You're allowed to hope." She left before Michelle could respond. Christmas came and went. New Year's Eve arrived with fireworks exploding over the marina, illuminating the yachts in bursts of color and light. Michelle worked the celebration, ensuring guests had everything they needed, managing the flow of partygoers, keeping everything running smoothly. At midnight, when the sky erupted in silver and gold, she found herself standing alone on the observation deck, watching the spectacle with a curious mixture of contentment and longing. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, expecting a work message, and found instead a text from an unknown number. Asterisk Happy New Year, Michelle. I hope the fireworks are beautiful there. I am watching them from Seoul, but I find myself wishing I were watching them from Miami instead. Daehoon asterisk. She stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed a response. Asterisk Happy New Year. The fireworks are beautiful, but the marina feels a little quieter without you. Safe travels. Michelle asterisk. She pressed send before she could second-guess herself. His reply came almost immediately. Asterisk, I will be back in 2 weeks. I have been counting, asterisk. Michelle smiled at her phone, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. The day Daehoon returned, Miami was graced with perfect weather, crisp air, clear skies, and a sea so blue it seemed painted. Michelle saw the horizon approaching from a distance, watching through the office windows as the yacht glided toward its slip with familiar precision. Her heart performed an undignified flutter that she firmly ignored. She was a professional. She would act like one. May, who had noticed Michelle's unusual attention to the windows, grinned knowingly. Someone's happy to see a certain yacht owner. I'm happy to see all our returning customers. Sure. That's why you redid your ponytail 3 times this morning. Michelle shot her a look that was supposed to be quelling, but probably missed the mark. By the time Daehoon entered the marina office, she had composed herself into a picture of calm professionalism. She looked up from her computer and smiled. Welcome back, Mr. Kang. I trust your travels went well. Looking travel-worn but smiling, that rare smile that transformed his serious face. They did. Thank you, Michelle. Behind them, Jiyoon and May exchanged glances at the use of her first name. I hope your stay with us will be comfortable, Michelle continued, sliding paperwork across the counter. Your usual slip is ready. Actually, he hesitated, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. I was hoping, if you have time later, we might continue our conversation from the festival. Perhaps over dinner? The air in the office seemed to still. Michelle felt Jiyoon's gaze on her, felt May's barely contained excitement, felt her own heart beating faster than it had any right to. I would like that, she said quietly. I'm off at 6. His smile widened. I'll see you then. He left, and the moment the door closed behind him, May let out a squeal. Michelle, did the chairman of Kong Maritime just ask you on a date? It's not a date. It's dinner between acquaintances. That's literally what a date is. Jiyoon, surprisingly, came to her defense. Let her breathe, May. It's just dinner. But Jiyoon's eyes met Michelle's across the office, and there was something there, not jealousy, but a quiet acceptance. An acknowledgement that she had stepped back, and that Michelle deserved whatever was coming next. Daehoon took her to a small restaurant she had never heard of, a family-owned place tucked away from the tourist crowds, where the owner greeted him by name and the food was simple and extraordinary. How did you find this place? Michelle asked, marveling at the perfectly grilled fish on her plate. My grandmother would have called it sniffing out the truth. He smiled at the memory. The most authentic places are never on the main streets. You have to wander, talk to locals, trust your instincts. Your grandmother sounds like she was wise. She was. She also had terrible taste in music. She loved American country songs from the 1970s. I grew up knowing every word to Take Me Home, Country Roads. Michelle laughed. That's surprisingly wholesome. What about your grandmother? What unexpected things did she teach you? Michelle thought about it. She taught me to dance. Old school dances, the electric slide, the cha-cha slide, a little bit of everything. Every Sunday after church, we'd push back the living room furniture, and she'd put on music and we'd just dance. That sounds wonderful. It was. Michelle felt the familiar ache of missing her grandmother, even though she was still alive, just older now, slower, more fragile. She lives in a nursing home now. I visit every weekend. She must be proud of you. I hope so. I try to make her proud. The conversation flowed easily from there. They talked about their childhoods, their dreams, their frustrations. Daehoon described the pressure of inheriting a company, the weight of expectations, the loneliness of being surrounded by people who wanted things from him. Michelle shared her own struggles, working her way through college, building a career from nothing, trying to prove herself in an industry that often undervalued people who looked like her. Something had shifted between them. The walls they both maintained had lowered, just slightly. I have a confession, Daehoon said as they walked back toward the marina. What's that? The 6 weeks I was away were some of the longest of my life. And not because of business. Michelle's breath caught. What do you mean? The marina lights cast soft shadows across his features, and the ocean stretched out behind him, endless and dark. I mean that I found myself thinking about you constantly. Your voice. Your laugh. The way you see the world. He paused. I know this is unconventional. I know we barely know each other. But I want you to know that I'm not interested in you because you're convenient, or because you work at the marina, or because of any practical reason. I'm interested in you because you make me feel like myself. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Michelle felt tears prick at her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sensation of being truly seen. I don't know where this is going, she said honestly. I can't make promises about the future. Your life is complicated, and mine is simple, and those things don't always fit together. I know. But I feel it too. Whatever this is. I feel it. His expression softened with something like hope. Then we take it slowly. One day at a time. No expectations. Just seeing where it leads. Michelle nodded, unable to speak. They stood there for a moment, two people on the edge of something new, the ocean keeping its ancient rhythm behind them. Then, without fanfare, they resumed walking side by side, not touching, but somehow closer than before. The months that followed were a study in patience. Daehoon's business kept him traveling New York, Los Angeles, Singapore, Seoul. But whenever he could, he returned to Miami, to Bayshore, to the quiet woman who treated him like a person rather than a title. Their relationship unfolded in small moments. Long walks along the waterfront as the sun set. Phone calls that stretched into the early hours of the morning, spanning continents. Letters, actual handwritten letters, that Michelle treasured like precious things. They learned each other's rhythms. Daehoon discovered that Michelle became quiet when she was overwhelmed and learned to give her space. Michelle discovered that Daehoon became formal when he was nervous and learned to gently tease him back to ease. They argued, too, not often, but occasionally. About communication, about his tendency to hide his feelings, about her occasional stubbornness. But the arguments never festered. They talked things through, apologized when needed, and emerged stronger. June and May watched from the sidelines with varying degrees of involvement. You two are disgustingly perfect, May complained one afternoon. It's like watching a romantic movie, except I don't get to skip to the good parts. June was more measured. I'm happy for you, she told Michelle privately. Really. And I'm glad I stepped back. It wouldn't have been right, not for me, not for him. What do you mean? I mean that I wanted him for the wrong reasons. You want him for the right ones. June shrugged. That matters. Summer arrived with tropical heat and sudden thunderstorms. One evening, Michelle and Daehoon sat on the horizon deck, watching a storm roll in across the ocean. Lightning flickered in the distance, and the air smelled of rain and salt. My board is asking about my personal life, Daehoon said quietly. They want to know if I'm planning to marry. If there's someone significant. Michelle's stomach tightened. What did you tell them? That my personal life is private. He paused. But they're persistent. There's pressure, cultural pressure, business pressure to settle down. To provide stability. And what do you want? He turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the distant lightning. I want you. I've known that for months. But I don't want to pressure you into something you're not ready for. Michelle felt the weight of the moment, the crossroads they'd been approaching without acknowledgement. I'm 23, she said slowly. I have a career I'm building. A grandmother who needs me. A life that's complicated in its own ways. She met his gaze. But I also know that what I feel for you isn't going away. It's only getting stronger. Michelle, let me finish. She took a breath. I can't promise I'm ready for everything your world entails. I can't promise I'll fit into Korean culture perfectly or that I won't make mistakes. But I can promise that I'll always be honest with you, that I'll always treat you like a person, and that I'll always choose us, whatever that looks like, over fear. The storm was closer now, the wind picking up. That's enough, Dae-hoon said softly. That's more than enough. By autumn, their relationship had become an open secret at the marina. Staff members speculated. Someone had spotted them at a restaurant and posted a blurry photo online, which had sparked a minor sensation among certain Korean business news outlets. Kong Maritime chairman spotted with mystery woman in Miami. The headlines were invasive but not cruel. Michelle ignored them as best she could, though Ji-hoon made a point of screening her social media to ensure nothing truly harmful emerged. There are some comments, Ji-hoon reported one morning. Some people questioning whether this is appropriate. Some people being racist, which I've reported. But mostly, people are curious. They want to know who you are. I'm just me, Michelle said simply. That's what makes it interesting. You're not an heiress or a model or an actress. You're a marina worker. It's almost revolutionary. I don't think treating someone with basic respect is revolutionary. In some circles, it absolutely is. The following month, Dae-hoon asked Michelle to attend a corporate yacht launch with him. It's in New York, he explained. A celebration of our expansion into the American market. There will be press, investors, business partners. I understand if you'd rather not. I'll come, Michelle said, surprising both of them. You don't have to. I know. But you've been part of my world for almost a year now. It's time I stepped into yours. The event was overwhelming. Michelle had chosen a simple but elegant dress, navy blue, understated, professional. May had insisted on helping with her hair, turning her usual micro braids into an elaborate updo that looked effortlessly sophisticated. The yacht, a magnificent vessel named Harmony, was the centerpiece of the evening. Hundreds of guests filled its multiple decks, champagne flowing, cameras flashing. Dae-hoon stayed close to her side, introducing her simply as Michelle Carter, my partner. Partner, not girlfriend, not date, partner. The word carried weight. She met investors who treated her with varying degrees of respect. She shook hands with celebrities she recognized from magazine covers. She spoke with Dae-hoon's American business partners, who seemed genuinely impressed by her poise. You're handling this beautifully, Dae-hoon murmured during a quiet moment on the observation deck. I'm terrified, Michelle admitted. You don't show it. I learned from the best. You. He laughed softly. I'm equally terrified. I've just been doing it longer. They stood together, watching the New York skyline glitter against the night, and Michelle felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness, of belonging despite the strangeness. Winter returned, and with it, a decision. My board is pushing for me to return to Seoul full-time, Dae-hoon told Michelle during one of their evening walks. The expansion is stable enough now that my presence in America is less critical. They want me to focus on Asian markets. Michelle felt the familiar tightening of worry. What does that mean for us? It means I need to make a choice. Either I stay in America and risk the company's direction, or I go back to Korea and risk losing you. Those aren't the only options. Aren't they? Michelle stopped walking, turning to face him. The marina stretched out behind them, familiar and beloved. Dae-hoon, I've been thinking about this for months. About what happens next. About whether there's a future here. And I know that your company is part of who you are. You can't just abandon it for me, I wouldn't want you to. But I also know that I can't just leave my grandmother, my career, my life here. So what do we do? Michelle took a breath. We compromise. Real compromise. You divide your time between Seoul and Miami. I'll visit Korea when I can learn the culture, the language, understand your world. We build a life that spans both places. That's complicated. Yes. It's messy and difficult and unpredictable. Also yes. And you're willing to try? Michelle smiled. I'm willing to try anything that means we don't give up on each other. Daehoon pulled an object from his pocket, a small velvet box that made Michelle's heart stop. "I wasn't planning to do this here," he said, his voice unsteady. "I had a whole elaborate plan. A private dinner. The right words. But standing here with you, looking at me like that. Daehoon. I know it's complicated. I know it won't be easy. But I have never been more certain of anything in my life." He opened the box, revealing a ring simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the light. "Michelle Carter, I am asking you to build a life with me. Not a perfect life, but a real one. One that spans continents and cultures. One that proves that what matters most isn't where you come from, but where you're willing to go together." Tears blurred Michelle's vision. "You're supposed to get down on one knee," she managed. "I'm nervous and forgot." She laughed, a wet, joyful laugh, as he immediately dropped to one knee. "Better. Much better." "So?" "Yes." The word came out like a prayer. "Yes, yes, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. The engagement sent ripples through every part of their lives. At the marina, Jiyoon and Mei organized an impromptu celebration. "I knew it," Mei declared. "I knew from the very first day he walked in here that something was going to happen." "You thought he was boring," Michelle reminded her. "I was wrong. I'm allowed to be wrong." Jiyoon was quieter, but her eyes were bright with genuine happiness. "You deserve this," she said simply. "Both of you." In Korea, the news was met with intense media scrutiny. Daehoon's publicity team worked overtime to manage the coverage, most of which ranged from curious to supportive. There were critics, there were always critics, but their voices were drowned out by a wave of public fascination. "The chairman's American sweetheart," one headline called her. Michelle hated the label, but understood its inevitability. Her grandmother, when told the news, had simply smiled and said, "I always knew you'd find someone who saw the real you. Make sure he keeps seeing it." The wedding was held a year later on a perfect evening in Miami. They chose the marina, where else would they choose, transforming the waterfront into a paradise of white flowers and golden lights. 200 guests gathered on a specially constructed platform extending over the water, surrounded by yachts decorated with ribbons and lanterns. Michelle wore a dress that blended Korean and African American traditions, white silk with subtle Kent patterns, elegant and unprecedented. Her microbraids were styled into an elaborate crown, woven with tiny pearls. Daehoon wore a traditional Korean hanbok, adapted for a modern groom, deep navy with silver embroidery. Jiyoon and Mei stood as bridesmaids, both glowing with pride. The ceremony was intimate, personal, deliberately simple. Vows were exchanged in both English and Korean. Traditions from both cultures wove together seamlessly. When they were finally pronounced married, the sun was setting over the ocean, painting everything in shades of rose and gold. "You know," Daehoon said as they shared their first dance, "I used to dread coming to places like this. All the attention, the expectations, the performance. And now? Now I look forward to every visit. Because you'll be here." "I love you," she said simply. "I know." He smiled against her hair. "I love you too." 3 years later. The marina hadn't changed much. The same yachts glided through the same waters. The same seagulls argued over the same scraps. The same sunrise painted the same sky in colors that never grew old. But Michelle had changed, grown, evolved, become someone she couldn't have imagined 3 years ago. She was now the director of operations for Bayshore Luxury Marina, the youngest person ever to hold the title. Her reputation for treating every customer with equal respect had become legendary, a model that other marinas studied and tried to replicate. Jiyoon had left the previous year to start her own luxury event planning company, her ambition finally channeled toward her own dreams rather than someone else's. She was thriving. Mei had surprised everyone by going back to school for marine biology, inspired by the charity event she'd helped plan. She now worked for the Marine Conservation Alliance, using her social media skills to raise awareness about ocean protection. And Daehoon. Daehoon split his time between Seoul and Miami, exactly as they'd planned. It wasn't perfect. There were long separations, time zone struggles, the constant adjustment of expectations. But they made it work. Because what they had was worth working for. Michelle stood on the observation deck as the sun rose over the marina, watching the light transform the water into a sheet of gold. In her hand was a cup of coffee. At her side was the man she loved. "What are you thinking about?" Daehoon asked. "Everything." "Nothing." "How lucky I am." "Luck had nothing to do with it. You earned this. All of it." She leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. "Do you remember the first time you asked me for a breakfast recommendation?" she said. "I remember being terrified." "Of what?" "Of you." He smiled at her surprise. "You were so yourself. Completely unimpressed by everything I represented. It was the most attractive thing I'd ever encountered." Michelle laughed. "I wasn't trying to be attractive. I was trying to do my job." "I know. That's what made it real." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the marina come to life. Below them, a small fishing boat chugged toward the fuel dock. 100-foot superyacht glided into its slip. A family prepared their sailboat for an early morning trip. And Michelle Carter, now Michelle Kong, watched them all with the same quiet smile she'd always worn. Because respect wasn't something people earned with money. Everyone deserved it. That was the truth she'd built her life on. And it was the truth she would carry with her, always, into whatever waters lay ahead. For more stories of love, culture, and unexpected connections, stay tuned to the channel. Until next time, may your own horizons be beautiful.